All right. Well, it is 11 Mountain Time, and that is when we said we're gonna start. So we're gonna stick to our timing here. So good morning to most, and good afternoon to some. This will be recorded, so again, anyone that's jumping on a little bit late here or needs to leave a little bit early, we completely understand. We appreciate everybody taking time out of their schedules to jump on the call with us today. We're just going to start with a few quick intros, whether you know myself, Lyssa, Andrew, or Jared, or you don't know any of us. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today as we kind of discuss the hottest topic, I would say, for 2025 and most likely in the future as well. So excited to have this conversation. It's going to be kind of a general discussion. We obviously asked everybody to ask a question as they registered for the event. So we really appreciate some of the questions that were dropped in. It's really going to kind of channel the way that this conversation leads today. If there's anything that we discuss or are currently discussing during the conversation that you really want to talk about, you want to learn more about, you want to dive into, please throw your questions in the chat into the kind of Q&A box. I'll keep an eye on that during the call, whether we are able to stop the conversation or not. I'll do my best. And if we can't answer those questions afterwards, all of our contact information will be shared. We'll be happy to set up a time later with you to discuss these things in detail and how we may be able to kind of help you guys. So I'll let everybody else kind of do some intros, then I'll wrap up with myself and then we'll get started. So Lyssa, if you wouldn't mind kicking it off, telling us a little bit about you and Cura HR, then we'll jump to Andrew, then Jared, and then I'll wrap up and we'll get this thing moving forward.
Great, thanks. My name is Lyssa. It's Melissa without the ma part. And I'm the founder of Cura HR. We are a human resources consulting firm that enables growing businesses to elevate their engagement and talent capability. And AI is hot with most of our clients, as well as with my own team. We work pretty closely with our clients on both engagement and specific HR projects. And so through that process are learning and experiencing how to leverage AI to be more effective and compliant. So that's why I'm here.
Great, I'll hop on in. I'm Andrew Thomaides. I'm president and founder of Entegro Business Solutions. And we act as a co-pilot to CEO and founders to help them build, scale, and exit their businesses and do that in two ways. One, offer fractional operator, fractional COO services, and we also offer exit planning services as well. So, we're alongside a lot of growing businesses in the B2B, professional services, tech, and SaaS space, and helping them through organizational change, operational change management, and of course, the topic today, AI usage in the workplace, working with a number of clients on how to leverage this opportunity in their business. So that's what we do in the world, and excited to be here today. Thanks for joining us.
Cool. And I'll go next. Jared Faris. I'm the founder of Faris Consulting. Similar to what Andrew said, I'm a fractional CIO CTO. So I help businesses who are big enough to need technology strategy, but not big enough to have it full time in a fractional manner. And so similar idea, different skill set. Do a lot of work with private equity when it comes to technical due diligence before they buy a company, and then all the things that they want to invest in from a technology standpoint afterwards. And also get to work with founders who want to set themselves up for sale and how they align technology with their strategy. So similar kind of size company providing different service offerings, and AI definitely fits into the world that I'm living in every day. So I'm excited to be here with you all.
Awesome. And I'm Jake Charen. I'm with Lakeside Insurance. I'm a risk architect here. So what I do is help design different risk management programs to help de-risk businesses, figure out different programs that we can help them with while placing insurance policies that fit the needs of their business. So I brought a bunch of different people into this room today, Andrew, Lyssa, and Jared. They're all partners of mine. We all help our clients together. We help each other out. And it's really just kind of an interesting group that we have that touches a lot of different pots of businesses. So we all work with small to mid-sized businesses, so 1 to 3 to 4 to 500 employees. And we really just like to help people grow their businesses, scale their companies, and not have to worry about the technical side or the bookkeeping or the HR or any of the insurance, because I know that it can get a little bit exhausting as you're trying to focus on your job. So today we're going to kind of touch on a few different topics within AI. We'll kind of start with AI's business impact. We're going to jump into then some strategies and implementation, what we're seeing, how businesses are utilizing it or how they should be utilizing it, kind of the AI risks and responsible use, and then what the workforce balance is going to be looking like now that we have AI to use as somewhat of an assistant or a different tool to us. So I'm excited to see how we're all going to be discussing this. I'll kind of be moderating, asking questions. And like I said at the beginning of the call, if you were not here, please ask questions in the Q&A. I'll make sure that we kind of slow the group down, that we field that, and we're kind of going through that all together. But again, we are going off most of those questions that were asked during the registration page. So again, thank you all for being here. And now we'll kind of jump into what we're seeing with AI's business impact. So kind of the first question that comes to mind is, how is AI helping businesses streamline operations, reduce their costs, and then driving marketing strategies? And I'll let either of the three of you kind of jump into whether you want to talk about streamlining operations, reducing costs, or driving market strategies to different size businesses.
Well, I guess I unmuted first, so I'll go first. How's that? So it's interesting. So I'm seeing this all over the place. Every company seems to be either experimenting with AI or thinking about it. From a revenue standpoint, I've seen a few things right off the bat that companies are doing without being technical companies, where they're not like spending billions of dollars on research. One is just facilitating the like outbound marketing that people are already doing, where they can feed in templates, using an off-the-shelf product like GPT, feed in templates of emails they've sent, give it a little bit of context around something else, a new client. So I've sent an example before. Here's an email that was successful. Here's a different lead and a different bit of information around them. Help me brainstorm some ideas. And doing this at scale where they're just using it as a force multiplier for every single person on the sales and marketing team. And I'm seeing that be really successful, where the human touch is still there and they're still very much individually reaching out to people, but they're using it to get 10% more done, 20% more done. And that seemed to be the gateway drug of AI for a lot of these businesses, especially on the sales side. And it's one of those things you can do kind of safely too to get started, because you're not feeding a bunch of sensitive information. And so that's right off the bat something I've seen make an impact at a lot of places.
And Jared, what do you see for some of these tools you're talking about? Because some people may know exactly what GPT is. Some people might say, what is that alphabet soup and what it's even talking about? So is there a cost to any of these things, at least to get businesses started? Because I know the question that I always hear is, or the topic is, I want to use AI, but they don't even know what that means, or they don't even know how it's going to impact their business. So I'll turn that back to you, Jared, and then let Andrew and Lyssa kind of pitch their ideas on that too.
Sure. So to get started, you pretty much can get started for free now. If you're using Microsoft for your email, you have access to Copilot, which is think of it as a chat bot where you can interact with it almost as if it's a person. If you don't have that, ChatGPT is a free one that's getting in a lot of news. If you're on the Google platform, their Gemini product is free. All of these have a free tier, which I think for most people to get started is more than sufficient for them to start experimenting. And the way I tell people to get started is to treat it as if it's like a helpful advisor or a helpful assistant or just a peer that you would run some question by, and just interact with it as if it's a person, not a person. But from a getting started standpoint, it's a good way to say, hey, just chat with this like it's the person at the desk next door and see if they give you good ideas. And any of those free tier, you certainly probably have one with your email client, or you can use ChatGPT or Claude or something else that has a free tier and get started for zero cost.
Awesome.
Oh, and Jake, if I could hop in, I'll kind of piggyback. I'll kind of work backwards. I'll kind of start with some examples of potential platforms that are low cost or no cost, and then hop into an example real quick, if that's all right.
Perfect.
So yeah, one thing, and this one isn't free, but again, pretty minimal cost. You're talking like $40 a month. And one thing I like about this tool, it's called Perplexity. It basically gives you access for $40 a month to a lot of the models you may have heard kind of getting thrown around: Claude, ChatGPT 4, Sonar, DeepSeek, Grok. and some primary image generators. So the ability to kind of, write in text and have images created for marketing, sales, you name it. So some of these are, and there's plenty of free opportunities, but even, I wouldn't even get scared away looking at some of the paid. It's amazing, even for $40 a month, the access you can get, and you don't necessarily need to buy, ChatGTP and Claude separately. They're starting to get, there's some products that are starting to integrate those. So just wanted to call that out. And then, one real quick real world example. Again, I think, we're living in the small and medium sized business space. So it's like, okay, how can we take advantage of this when we don't have billions of dollars in resources to throw at AI? One example, a local Colorado company. I'm based in Colorado. It's a roofing business. And we have a lot of hailstorms here. Actually, I think we have the most hailstorms in the country. And so what happens, you have a big hailstorm, right? And then everyone's flooding in and calling roofing companies. And historically, they haven't been able to handle that call volume. They don't have enough reps at that point to handle it. And so there's a huge missed opportunity for revenue and service, right? Depending on the values, they want to be able to pick up the phone. And so what they leveraged was some basic AI agents, phone agents, to be able to handle that influx of calls. And those agents were tied into their calendar system. Pretty basic integration. You don't need a huge development team to do that. And we're able to basically handle that call volume, book all those customers, and take full advantage of when that hailstorm hit in a way that they weren't able to previously. So that's just another example there. And there's a number of products on the market, relatively low cost, to support in that as well.
Yeah, no, I love that example that you bring, Andrew, because I think the main thing that people are concerned about in a blue collar space is that AI doesn't impact them, or that AI
Right.
can't help their business actually, because we've been told that if you're using your hands in work, then no one's going to take your job, which does make complete sense. And I completely agree with that, but it's not looking to take your job, similar to kind of what Jared was saying as well, is use this as an assistant, use it as a tool to help you get to a place where you could be without something like this, and just really empowering you and empowering your business to be able to have that kind of interesting growth strategy in ways that are simple like that again, they may have no idea, but 30 minutes of sitting down with you to go through that, they're like, oh my God, we could have been doing so much more business, and it's impactful, and it's really not that expensive, and it's pretty cost effective. So
Yeah.
Lyssa, I'm going to let you kind of chime in as well. And then once you kind of chime in on that, I want to hear kind of specifically how AI is really transforming HR, the workplace culture, and what you've kind of seen with cross-team collaboration now too. So not to throw too much at you, but I know you've got some interesting insights.
That's all right, Jared. I can maybe answer that briefly with a couple of key points. What we're experiencing is a massive range of adoption. So organizations almost exclusively saying, oh, well, we don't really have a policy. There's Copilot or there's Gemini on our platforms that we're using, but we don't really have a policy, all the way to we're actually engaging with like AR strategists and third-party consultants to help us identify and implement, design and implement process improvement and how changing the way we do business. That my belief, right? I'm the human resources side of things. So my belief is that you're getting that because for those of you listening, I'm sure you experienced this in your org, right? You have the people who are fearful, uncomfortable, not early adopters, and then you have the people who are always trying everything. What I would tell you is you have both in your organization. So from a human workforce perspective, acknowledge you have both. Don't pretend like people aren't using AI. They are, I promise. The other thing to keep in mind is that you have people who aren't, because there is some level of fear or discomfort with that engagement. And I actually believe that we should be engaging both in similar ways. Now, the outcomes are different, but understanding where they're at and sharing that feedback with the organization first can be really, really powerful. So being able, like surveying your population and saying, who's using it? What are you using? How frequently? How are you getting value? What do you wish it would do? I don't know about you, but maybe you guys can experience this. I don't know. We're using Copilot and the paid version, and I'll go into Excel and think it's going to do something really cool, and it just doesn't do what I want it to do, right? So identifying those pain points is a great starting off point, and then sharing that feedback to help the people who are a little more resistant or fearful to see the potential and the opportunity, and kind of give permission with boundaries. It's a whole separate topic I'm sure we'll get to, but around just policies and compliance. So I'll stop
Yeah.
talking and hand it back
No,
over
no,
to Jake.
yeah, no, that was fantastic. And I know you and I are kind of on the same side here, Lyssa. We're kind of looked as like the bad guy or the enemy. Oh, I don't want to tell the insurance person I'm doing this, or I don't want to tell my HR person that I'm doing that. But it is important to make sure that you're having conversations with all employees, because there might be some of the younger generation that's using AI and is adopting it, but maybe it's not the best practices for your agency or your business. And we'll jump into that a little bit later. But also, not just that they're not adopting the right ways of using it, but also potentially making people in your organization feel uncomfortable, knowing that maybe they're a little bit older and they just hear this AI word and they're kind of scared to use it. Or, oh my God, is Jake going to take my job because he's able to do everything on a computer? And no, and I know that Jared's going to jump into this later because he always talks about AI is going to be your best friend, but what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And so it really is crucial to kind of understand that, yes, it might be a change, but just like how nobody wanted to move to an iPhone and go away from having a typing keyboard. After a few years, things like that change. So let's all help each other out and figure out different ways that we can kind of adopt these things as well. And I think that jumps perfectly into kind of the strategy and implementation questions that we had. And I'll let anybody kind of answer this. I know we kind of talked about choosing some of the right platforms, but is there anything specifically that you guys have seen really successful for clients that you've worked with, or ways that companies are educating their teams on utilizing AI to better the business?
I can piggyback off of what Lyssa said, because Lyssa, you mentioned having people who are scared. Having a governance policy for those people actually helps them feel less scared. I think because they know what they're allowed to do. And then you also mentioned that you have those early adopters, and turning them into champions has been a really powerful thing inside of clients to help them internally roll out tools with people who know their world better than I do or any external person would. And I don't know if y'all have seen the same thing, but the governance policy, while it could be a risk thing, seems like it's actually an accelerator in a lot of cases.
No, Jared, I see the same thing. I completely agree, because it opens, back to the earlier point, kind of opens the door in the conversation. We're not just acting like it's not happening, or, just kind of throwing things into an organization without having dialogue, either side of that spectrum. And so, yeah, I think that's probably undervalued, Jared. I agree at some level. It's just that the power of starting with some governance and engaging the team, because that's where you land on your champions. Anyone that's hesitant, you can start to see who is more passionate and already engaged. You can pair them up, and that could be even on the leadership level. There could be leaders in the organization that know we really want to. There's opportunity here, but hesitant for some reason. There's somebody else in the organization who's already been working at this, after hours, loves it. And it's like, okay, let's lean into that. And that's where I see a lot of movement and a lot of power, being presented in an organization. So yeah, I'll piggyback on that for sure, Jared.
We have a couple of clients they've created a culture that is very safe and transparent. So kind of getting corrected is an okay thing, right? Or getting redirected is an okay thing. So while in both situations I'm thinking of, they have updated their information security policy to really clarify what's okay and what isn't with AI. But one is on Google platforms, one is on Microsoft platforms. And in both cases, they've created an employee persona and made it public. So what they've said is, hey, anytime you're using AI in your job, we want you to share with the rest of the team, because we don't know how to use it yet. We haven't figured it out, and we don't have the resources to establish a department or a person who owns this. So instead, we're just going to create this persona. We're going to give you guys access or encourage you to use it, and then share how you're using it. And then if anything comes up that's maybe a little questionable, we have a conversation about it. No one's in trouble. There's no write-ups or anything. But right, if our team is seeing anything that is maybe an HR concern, we can go to them, or a compliance concern from a confidential or protection perspective. We can go to them and say, hey, I'd like you to update this. And then we share with the team the learning. So it's, again, very transparent, safe environments. But in both of these situations, they're demonstrating to the entire org very publicly how they're using AI every day. And it's just copying to a channel or engaging with the bot live in front of everybody.
Yeah, and I think the beautiful thing, I'll piggyback on that real quick too, Lyssa, that I'm seeing an opportunity here in our clients and across the small and medium-sized business space. Again, you know, what we lack in resources, we can make up for it in collaboration and speed, right? And I think, Alyssa, what you're touching on is a perfect example of that. It's like, hey, one advantage we all have and our clients have in small and medium-sized business space is the collaboration, the ability to unlock that experimentation. That's kind of how I would label it, Lyssa, right? And create that momentum in that way, because we can move a lot more quickly and we can learn. And so I think by fostering that, there really again unlocks a lot of potential there, and allows to kind of evolve what the AI strategy may be for the business as well, as you're bumping up against some of these questions that could be a little bit dicey or we're unsure about. That's where you start to refine the approach in the org. So yeah, I think it's a great call, Lyssa.
Yeah, no, I agree with exactly what you guys are saying too. And I think that an important thing that we talk about within insurance as well as with AI and implementing new things in a business, no matter what it might be, is just being proactive and rather than reactive. So it's kind of hard to say that with AI because there haven't really been federal laws to come out yet. There's not state laws, there's not local laws. What can I put into AI chatbots or what can I not? And I think making sure that everyone's either on the same page, putting different usage policies in place, figuring out what that even means to your organization and how people are utilizing it is so crucial. And that kind of jumps into where we're going to run with a little bit on the risk and the reasonable use. So I know I constantly talk about what state legislation are you a part of and where is your business located? What type of information are you taking in? Is it personal health information? Is it personally identifiable information? So are you thinking about what the data and privacy security laws are? Are you ensuring that you're not introducing AI in the wrong platform, grabbing your client's financial information and just plugging it into a GPT or different AI tool because it's going to make your life easier? Well, is that information now out there on the web and your business could potentially be sued? Maybe. So we need to kind of think about these things. And it really is kind of understanding what a true maturity framework looks like for AI. So we kind of have a good slide here that Jared threw together. We're going to kind of all take some turns discussing on this, but I'll let Jared kind of kick it off from a whole risk standpoint of like, what are we seeing? Where are people starting? Where should they go? And how should you at least not be overly scared, but scared enough that you're making sure that you're doing the right thing?
Thanks, Jake. And yeah, I'll really briefly touch on the three levels. This is just a simplified way of thinking about AI and where it would fit in your organization, just to have some framework we can anchor to. And I think people a lot of times are used, or they're at least aware of like self-driving cars and this promise of a car that does everything for you. And then in reality, we mostly have a car that beeps at you if you're about to change lanes into somebody else. Kind of think of it that way, where level one is giving AI tools to your team to make them a little bit better at what they're doing. But they're in control. They're bookending both parts of the process. They're deciding what information to provide. And you still need to have governance at this point. And Lyssa's probably best equipped to talk about this. But a lot of times when I'm talking to a customer at this level, I'm like, don't share client data, don't share private data, but you can certainly share public information. And I usually get the clients just started with that. Like if you're bidding on a public request for a proposal and it's published on the web, you can feed that into an AI and ask it to highlight things you may have missed in a way that's pretty safe. As you go down towards full automation, where you have AI running the entire show, your risk goes way up because you have people who hopefully are providing some quality control, but are maybe checking in when you roll it out and then it's running forever. And if there's no human engagement, you need to have a lot more control around what's happening. In reality, a lot of vendors are selling you this level three, fully automated, automating all your workflows stuff, but it's not actually that. And most of what's actually out there that's useful is either a tool like a Copilot that just makes you a little bit better, or I think what Andrew mentioned earlier with the call intake, something that is relatively safe that helps streamline your, booking people to replace roofs or something like that. But it's not like robots then going on your roof to do the work. And I think most of the actual products are at that level one or level two space where it's streamlining either a little bit of what you're doing, but you're in control of it, or it's streamlining a couple steps in a process you're in control of. And as you move down this framework I think your need for policies and rules and understanding your risk ratchets up incredibly. At the top, it's relatively safe. I'll pass it over to people who know the risk a lot better than I do, though.
Yeah, and I'll let kind of Lyssa touch on it from an HR standpoint, but ways that we've kind of discussed with different organizations and ways to make people understand AI or feel more involved is creating prompts that your organization can use that are safe and people that know what they're using. So by creating a prompt, I mean typing out different ways that you should be looking into maybe what a client does or how you can potentially help a client best, or ways that you can structure different programs or ways that you can scale your business. So creating these different prompts, whether you find it online and then make sure that everyone internally is okay to utilize it, and then maybe even implementing it in some sort of an AI usage policy. But again, what is an AI usage policy? What does that even mean? Is it similar to how I can use social media at work, or is it similar to what I should be doing outside of the office to make sure that I'm representing my company the right way? So it is a really touchy subject right now, but we don't need to be scared of it overall. I think it's let's figure out ways to utilize the people in this room to partner together. And kind of Andrew said it best. We have to collaborate and we have to make sure that we're all utilizing these things. I know that Jared has a much stronger pulse on AI, but I'll bring him certain tools that I'm using and he's like, oh, that makes my life a lot easier, and vice versa. And so it's just kind of fun to see what we're all doing in this space. And that's why it's exciting to be in this small business world right now as technology continues to grow.
I don't know that I can speak to every big risk, but from an HR perspective, I will say that for anyone who, again, there's this risk of not saying anything or not doing anything. To me, there's this big risk of assuming people aren't really doing it and not saying something. I don't know what the risk is since there aren't really state regs or even federal regs around this yet, and we're not seeing lawsuits so much. But I would just encourage you to take whatever your current information security policy is and add on to it, and AI, right? You don't let anybody go out and download any application onto their machine and start using it. So same applies. Confidential information, personal protected information, and personal health information is all those rules still exist. So privacy and protection around that. I think where the risks come in is the nuance. So I don't know how many on this call are actually seeing or using AI or seeing people use AI in your organization to investigate or curate information about their health plans or about their benefits or about, like, I want to request an accommodation or I have an issue. That information, if you're using, for example, Microsoft Copilot, and that's now in your network, how accessible is that to the rest of the org, and how careful, what direction do you want to give people? So for me, I don't know specifically how these risks are going to show up, but I will tell you that the best thing to do is to acknowledge it and start talking about it. You don't need to create a 5-page training manual that everyone has to read that says, hey, if you have an accommodation, here are the things to avoid typing into AI. But you can give some general parameters and reminders around what you put in is now in the AI or the platform, and it's important to be sensitive about what you're asking and how you're asking it and what information you're providing.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback kind of what I'm seeing from a compliance lens, or what I would be thinking about in the context of this conversation, because I agree there's not a lot kind of fully in place yet, but I think it's going to come. And so, the way I would think about it is kind of transparency, fairness, data governance, accountability. And it's like, what does that mean? So I think like kind of two kind of key buckets. One is kind of governance policy, which we kind of already touched on, Lyssa and Jared, right? But I also think, impact assessments, I think, is something else that's going to come down the road, which kind of ties into bias, right? Like actually testing these outcomes. I think that's really, really important, because effectively all these models, whether it's from in your company or even public data, comes with its own level of biases, and how we apply those. Especially, I would say, hey, in any companies, think about hiring, insurance, healthcare, and finance. I think those are the first ones to probably lean into this. And so, yeah, thinking about documentation around AI training, and like any modifications you're making, and then I think, Jared, you mentioned this as well, is like, a human review of any significant automated decisions, contract privacy stuff. That's kind of what I'm seeing from an operational lens, Jared.
Yeah, yeah. Some examples of specific things I've seen that kind of run the gamut of ability and risk. So going back, Andrew, to your example earlier of booking, if you have like a home repair,
Yeah.
If you were gonna make your Calendly or some booking site public on your website anyway, letting a chatbot streamline that for a user is pretty safe. Like there's nothing secret in that information you're sharing.
Yeah.
And so you probably want to have somebody check to make sure that when somebody schedules an event, it actually shows up in your calendar. But there's not like a lot you have to do to make sure that you're not leaking sensitive roofing secrets, right? You're tying this to HR things. It sort of depends on what you're doing. If you're saying, hey, we're just having our handbook here and the chatbot's going to help you find the page something's on, pretty safe. Yeah. Hey, it's actually tied into personnel records. You better work with a technology company to make sure that there's a lot of secure controls around where that data is going. And so if you think about, I think to Lyssa's point earlier, you say like, hey, we take our existing policy and AI. Well, if it's something that you would have put on a public website before or shared on the intranet for your entire company, it's probably fairly safe to add a little bit of AI to that to make it a little bit faster because you're already saying this is public. If it's something you would not put on your public website, you better be really careful and make sure that the tools you're hooking up don't leak that information in a way you've never anticipated before. So I think it's not, if you think of it in those terms, and I think I like how Lyssa said, your current policy and then AI, and just sort of say what would be different, you can probably avoid a lot of those risks and probably identify a handful of real low-hanging fruit that are safe that can maybe cut a bunch of hours from call center or something else and make things a little bit faster, a little bit better without having to have a huge risk to your organization.
And Jared, I just want to piggyback on this idea of it's not just public, right? It's also internal. So what we're seeing as the risks are more a matter of people don't know what prompts to use, which is okay. This is experiential and should be open. That's the point of it. And if we can just give people an understanding, if we can just provide snippets and tips and experiences to give people an understanding of, well, if it's tied to your personnel records, if you're using Copilot, the paid version of Copilot, for example, and you go to the work tab and you're typing in information and that AI has the ability to go to your personnel records and pull a response, you don't know if you're going to get a response that's about an accommodation request for a health issue that some other employee had 3 years ago. So my point is less about external and more about like, hey, just make sure that you're asking a technologist to help. You're bringing in a third party, even if it's just an initial implementation. Like, what are the risks here of telling people to use it for internal support, and how can we control that or mitigate the risk? And then what do we need to tell our employees about what's appropriate to put out there? Because whatever you're putting in there, even if it's on the internal side, not external, it's now accessible and used for responses.
That's a great point. I've seen this happen where companies had internal documentation that was hidden but not secured, so people didn't know it was out there. And then they attached a chatbot, and suddenly everyone's payroll data is searchable because the chatbot's looking up everything. And before, people could have found the file, but they didn't know to look for it. So it wasn't secure ever, and it always could have been a risk.
That's
and
right.
Now a very helpful AI is going to find that information. And so I think internally, that's where you need to have probably a security provider help you with governance of your data. Like, that's not even an AI thing, just looking over your data and how things are secured. And then if you're using HR systems, to have an HR provider that understands those systems and how those are secured, which is different than the tech provider. And you would definitely want to look at all of those things before you attach that Copilot to your network. And Jake, I don't know if there are security or like insurance liability implications of this, but I bet there are.
Yeah, that's a great question, Jared.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I was going to jump into next and kind of take the point from Lyssa talking about case studies. That's why everybody's here today. We don't want you to be the case study that goes out on the news because your company was plugging information in. So yeah, absolutely. From a cyber insurance standpoint, what type of information are you inputting into an AI chatbot? And do you know how the chatbot is actually used, or what type of AI framework and model you're using? Some of these frameworks are actually just internal learning things such as Copilot, where it's just learning learning what's going on and you're teaching it certain things, whereas ChatGPT is all external to the web. So if I put Jared's company's information on there and then somebody figures out a way to search that about Faris Consulting, they're going to grab all the different information that they want, and it's now public knowledge. And that was my breach. Again, how that gets tied back into me, there's different ways that it's going to go down. I don't want to be the one to kind of figure out again, dealing with the case study and you being the one that's in the news. But I mean, we're seeing small things. I know there was one last year, maybe it was 2 years ago now, where an attorney was searching information about a case. Turned out everything was false. It was all through ChatGPT. It's going to grab information. So using these things in a smart way and being sophisticated about it is pretty important, and making sure that you are reaching out to the right resources. Again, I don't focus on HR, which is why I lean on Lyssa. If I have someone that I'm looking to implement certain chief technology things, I'm going to go to Jared. And if I want to understand maybe better ways to structure a business, I'm going to go to Andrew. And none of these guys really know what type of insurance we're really dealing with on a day-to-day basis, other than when we break into the policies and understand what's included or excluded. So as these data and privacy laws continue to adapt from a state, from a federal level, it's going to be really interesting to see what's actually been put into these AI tools. Because again, sometimes they can be fun. You're using it to figure out how to fill something in for a recipe because you're missing a certain ingredient, and it's great for that, and we use it all the time at our house. But other ways on a much more serious scale is like, oh my God, I didn't want to look at a financial information, so I'm just going to throw that spreadsheet into there, where it's like, whoa, let's think about these things from a proprietary information and how our business is actually being safe. And I think that kind of jumps into really kind of some perfect discussion of what is the true future of AI, even though I know it feels like we are in the future. But what do you all see as the biggest challenges that companies are facing when embracing AI, and maybe different ways that they can be effective when utilizing it today?
Maybe, Lyssa, you want to hop in, or Jared, do you want me to run first? I guess I'll go real quick, and then I'll toss it off. I'll toss it off. I think I guess I'm going to start with your first kind of question, Jake, which is like, hey, where do we kind of see it going? And I think there's an evolution, kind of high level view on AI and operations. I would say is like, hey, companies, the opportunity is for companies that can move beyond AI as a tool and integrate it as a collaborator. I think those are the ones that are going to, see kind of a massive impact on their business. And I think in order to get there, it actually takes the steps that Lyssa, you called out, Jared has called out, we talked about today, which is, I think there's kind of three elements. One is empowering managers with AI, optimizing business decision making with AI, and then continuously evolving your AI strategy. And I think the last kind of component that I see there at a high level is like, hey, if you're out there and you have a really, strong domain expertise right now, in the business that you're in and in the industry that you're in, there's a huge opportunity to take advantage of that domain expertise by leveraging this technology within your company and within your team. And so again, I think the next level to that, what's going to be powering businesses, 4 years from now and really setting people apart, is taking it from just a tool in the kind of the collaboration space intentionally in the business. That's what I'm seeing, Jared and Jake and Lyssa.
I can jump in with a few specific things I think, like tactical things that companies are going to be doing in the near future, which I think it's hard to project further out. But one is, I think it's going to be rare where we have analysis heavy jobs that are not facilitated by AI. And I think that's going back to the example of using like a public GPT. There are a lot of jobs where you have to consume a bunch of information, think about it, find patterns. And if you're using something like the paid Copilot, like Lyssa mentioned earlier, you can tie it to documents that you have that are kind of yours. There are a lot of jobs where you can look at public information that you're not even particularly concerned about. And I think most of us are probably overwhelmed with too much information now. There's always information flooding in, and LLMs, the LLMs being the model that like ChatGPT or Claude uses today, they're really good at taking a ton of information with a little bit of your guidance of what you're looking for or what you think is important or things you want to have highlighted, and then summarizing it. And I think any business that doesn't start using these tools now to make their information workers be more efficient and faster at processing things, and finding the signal from the noise, I think they're going to get left behind really quickly. And it's also one of the low-hanging fruits. Like, it's easy to get going. You can use these free tools. And then the second thing I think we're already seeing at least buzz around it is you'll hear agentic AI, but the idea of building little bits of AI that fit in a workflow where you don't need a programmer to connect things. A lot of tools, off-the-shelf tools like CRMs have them now. And there's make.com as an example, or you may have heard of Zapier. There's these drag and drop engines where you can say, okay, I need to drag an action into here and say, well, this action is when a file gets dropped into a folder. And then you drag another action that says, okay, summarize it. I'll give you an example from an investment company I talked to where they look at tons of public companies that they want to be late stage investors in. They can have an agent go and pull down information around, they invest in software companies from public websites. They can feed the agent in information around what is a good investment for them. And then the thing can spit out a spreadsheet every day that says, here are the next 50 we found that might be worth a human looking into. And so it can take 5,000 line items, do a little bit of analysis, roll it down to 50, and then hand it to somebody who can go and take it the rest of the way. And I think most businesses probably have some labor intensive, repetitive workflows like that where you could bolt an agent in to make your people just more effective. And it doesn't put them at risk. Those people are just going to be working on the higher value stuff that's not easy to automate. I think those are two workloads that every business is going to be applying soon, or they're going to be way slower than their competition. And that's going to be a big risk.
I am not much of a technology strategist or visionary, so I don't feel strongly about how, in general, AI is going to change. But I will say that there's no doubt that it will drive workforce transformation. I want to touch on that human element again, which is this idea that there is real fear or resistance to change, and fear for different reasons, right? We'll take the most common. Oh, is it going to take my job away? And so I do think that as leaders in your organization, starting to talk about, again, just asking the questions, how's it being used? And then starting to talk about AI in a way that says, no, it's actually going to enable you to work smarter, more efficiently, do more. We don't know how yet, but that's where you come in, right? AI doesn't have ingenuity and creativity. AI is giving you solutions that already exist somewhere out there, right? So and using language and communicating about it with your organization in a way that says, we want to, as an organization, elevate you and your careers and your work and take away the pain in your job. And it requires you, human being, to use your creativity and your critical thinking to figure out how, and to share how, and to and to start to engage. So I guess ultimately, yes, of course, I mean, as an HR consulting firm, we're already cutting workflows, cutting really complicated analytics down. There is still a lot of scrubbing. I'll tell you, there are a lot of things that we try to use AI for, and then we go, oh, that's not really right. And there's teaching involved, right? So, but this experience is definitely helping us to shave down time and to add value in different ways. So it's not removing the role of the analyst. It's just allowing them to spend their time doing more creative things, including just taking all of our results and creating something visually that's beautiful and easy to understand, so that when we're reading out to a C team, oftentimes we're reporting out to CFOs. When we're reading out to our CFOs, that we're able to visually show, in addition to all the data that they want to look at, in a very high level summary of what we're coming back to them with. So there's so many cool capabilities that I think that you're going to continue to see your employee base using, encouraging them, and using language that is supportive and with boundaries will help.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, Lyssa. And kind of where I'm seeing the future of AI going is not to be scared of using it, but AI is going to make us better at our jobs. It's going to make us better at being a presenter, or better at creating different marketing tools, or ways that we can scale our business in ways that we didn't even think. Rather than having to work 60, 70-hour weeks, you can work a 45-hour week, and the work that you're putting in through AI actually turns it into what it would have been a 100-hour week in the past. So a few different examples that I utilize it for for and ways that I'm seeing a lot of strategy. I'll just kind of go with a few quick ones. The first is using Gamma AI. It's spelled GAMMA and then AI. And so I use that for different sorts of PowerPoints now. So rather than sitting there on Microsoft PowerPoint and dragging an image off Google that might not be actually able to use because it was probably copyrighted somewhere, it's utilizing the right different images that I can actually use. I build out an entire agenda that I'm really good at. I'm really detail oriented. I'm fantastic at putting the agenda together, but sometimes the visuals and ways that I'm thinking about putting things on might be best for me, but not best for the person that I'm presenting it to. So throwing that document straight into an AI tool such as Gamma, having it create something and then asking it, what would you think if you're a construction company? Would you even be interested in this? Or if it's a manufacturing firm? Or what resonates with different people like that? Again, it's a computer at the end of the day, so it doesn't have the full human touch. But if there's a lot of construction companies and manufacturing firms that are in there and utilizing that, they're probably going to be interested as well. Another way that I'm utilizing it for, if you follow me on LinkedIn or you see any of my posts, it helps me kind of craft and create different marketing campaigns. So rather than sitting there and writing out all of these marketing campaigns, I can just spitball a bunch of ideas that I have, get really organized, get really creative, kind of ask it different ways to do things, and then also saying like, okay, I want it to come from a risk management standpoint. I want this to actually be interesting and help people. What, again, I might find is super interesting. Some people are like, I don't want to talk about cyber insurance, Jake. That's really not that fun for me. But what I do want to know is how it's going to negatively impact my business if I don't have cyber insurance. And so kind of switching the lens a little bit too. And then the other thing that I see on ChatGPT, if you have the paid version, is people are creating custom GPTs now. So what that means is you can teach it about your entire organization, who Lakeside Insurance is, what our process is, how we help clients, feed reviews that come off of Google so they know who we are, who Jake is, what the business is, and then asking it different questions on how I can phrase certain things for different businesses. Because again, we're all really smart in our own ways, but what one person might think is interesting, the other person might just completely have their eyes glazed over. So figuring out different ways to utilize these tools internally, and then also making sure you understand who exactly in your organization is comfortable using it and who isn't. And then it also is fun to talk about these things with your clients too. I know I like going through a presentation. People are like, oh my God, where'd you get those pictures? I'm like, it actually took me like 8 minutes to make this PowerPoint, but the agenda took me 2.5 hours to do because I went so detail oriented. So I think it's exciting. There's obviously a lot of risk coming from that side of the house. It's something that we're very topical in making sure that everybody's aware of, but let's get into this world together and make sure that we're all continuing to grow and scale our business and not get caught in the past.
Jake, can I
Well
give an
said, Jake.
example of that? Sorry.
No, go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, please do.
You mentioned you're using it to create PowerPoints. I also use it to, I'll say translate technical or compliance topics to like normal people speak. And so there are times I'm helping clients. A lot of what I do is help them with getting prepared for different compliance efforts that require a technology component. And at some point, you do need an expert in some of these things to get work done. But there's other times where you have to just explain what something means to a business, or there's a process that's going to have to change. And it's not necessarily particularly technical, but it's part of a 300-page document from some government agency that is not, it's not possible to parse. And just free off-the-shelf AI is really helpful for saying, how would I describe this to somebody who works in precision manufacturing? Or how would I describe this to somebody who owns a lawn care business? Or I've read this regulation and I understand what it means, but I don't understand what it means in the context of some part of the business or technology. And I would not necessarily, take something like that to court, but when you're doing research and you're just trying to better understand an area, it's wonderful for that. And a lot of times, if it is wrong, your spider senses will tingle. You'll know it's wrong. But when it kind of connects things that you're already aware of, it's super powerful. And in a way, it gives you access to some expertise you wouldn't have otherwise because that stuff is out there on the web and it's not sensitive information. So I use it for that kind of stuff a lot. Understanding what maybe an insurance policy means, then I know what questions to go to Jake with because I'm like, oh, 3 of these make sense. There's 2 more that I'm still lost. So I use it for that kind of research outside of my expertise all the time.
Yeah, that's great. I think to piggyback on that real briefly, I think the way to think about that at a high level is just kind of prompting techniques. And there's a whole kind of prompting, multi layered prompting strategies you can implement or frameworks to think about. But in that case, it's like a multi-persona prompt, right? Put me in this person's shoes and tell me how they would respond to this or think about that. And so I just want to put that in the context of, again, free tools. Jared, you were calling out as well. It's like, hey, you can leverage those and you can get creative about how you think about approaching prompting, not just the actual prompt itself, but hey, a more multidimensional way of leveraging this free AI to help you think through how to approach a conversation, how to approach a deal, how to approach a potential customer, or even a team member, right? Or, you have an all hands meeting. What's a better way to ask this question or to kind of get the conversation going, right? So I'll leave it there, but just want to piggyback on that and put in the context of, prompting frameworks.
No, I completely agree with kind of everything that we've all discussed today. There's a lot of different tools, so let's be smart about the ways that you're using these tools and just kind of be efficient with it too. I know that, again, things are changing every single day. The ways that you might have done things in the past is not how you're going to be doing things in the future. We recently started using the AI note-taking tools so it can jump into a Teams meeting with us rather than all of us sitting there. It's like, hold on. Can you stop saying what you were saying? I got to write this down really quick. It's like we can go through the conversation. Typically, we would need to have 2 or 3 of us on a preliminary call because what Jake might not hear, Andrew heard, or what Lyssa missed, Jared heard. And so we're all collaborating there where it's like, no, now I've got my best friend that's an AI note-taking tool. Again, there's 15 of them out there, 20 of them. So make sure that you're talking to someone that's utilized them and figuring out what might be best for your organization. But use these tools to make you smarter and work a little bit less hard on certain things that were kind of ticky-tacky work that you've been doing in the past, and ways that can actually grow and elevate your business so you can focus on what you love to do. Because not all of us love to be doing back office work. Not all of us love to be doing the tedious things, but we have to do the monotonous tasks in order to continue to run a business successfully. So it's just figuring out, okay, what tool can I really utilize to actually grow and scale my business in ways that I might have never thought of even 2, 3 years ago, and just how quickly things are kind of changing and evolving overall. So I'll kind of leave it right now for any open questions. I know we threw a lot at everyone today. I wanted to share all of our contact information here. If you did want to reach out, like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, we're going to be sharing a recording. I do kind of have a document that we put together that just kind of discusses maybe what you should consider crafting when creating an AI policy and just kind of what looking into that looks like. But we're going to think about doing another one of these in the fall. I'm sure that different AI tools are going to come out by September or October. Everyone's going to kind of take their summer break, hopefully use AI to have a little bit more enjoyment during their summertime and not be doing a little bit more of the tedious work, but it is exciting. So I'm really fortunate for everybody that joined today, surrounded by a great group of people here to answer a bunch of questions. If there were any lasting questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, reach out to anyone on LinkedIn here. And if Andrew, Lyssa, or Jared have anything else they want to discuss or bring up in these last few minutes, that'd be great. But again, I just would like to thank everybody for their time today and thought this was a really powerful discussion.
Yeah, maybe we hold for a second, see if any questions come through. I saw Jason put one in, and Lyssa, thanks for getting on top of that one. Guess we'll see if any other questions here first. Otherwise, I thought maybe I'd throw out some other helpful tools.
Yeah, that'd be great. Why don't you discuss some of those tools?
Yeah, so
tools,
you just
Andrew, we can see if
piggybacking on
anyone
this,
has
but
any questions.
Yeah, I've been through, and I think we all have a ton. I mean, taking notes these days doesn't make any sense. I've been through a number of note taking tools, but Fathom by far was the best so far, like note summary, and there's other AI functionality. SaneBox is another great one that automatically cleans your inbox and manages it for you. Crystal Knows kind of ties into what Jared was talking about on the sales and marketing side, where basically it creates personality types in real time when you're approaching a prospect or a customer or composing an email. It'll tell you actually how compelling of an email you're writing given that person's profile. It pulls public information, LinkedIn, you name it, and can support you there. Apollo's an end-to-end AI sales platform that I've seen a lot of success with, and Descript, end-to-end video editor via text editing. Those are just some on the sales and marketing side and a little bit on the ops side as well.
Jake, you mentioned to me before, and I didn't catch the name, but a tool that will cut up video clips if you're producing your own videos for marketing, and it produces like a transcript.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a lot better at doing that and putting stuff out there. I don't really like to edit clips. I don't like to do that. You can all clearly can tell that I like to talk in front of people, so it's helpful that to use a tool like this. So it's called Opus Clips, OPUS. If you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram, if you're on Twitter, and you like watching videos when you're with your family, but you don't want the sound to be on and it has all the transcription, it'll completely transcribe that. So I've done conversations or interviews with people where it's 20 minutes. I throw the 20-minute video in there. It chops up 20 clips within, if you want them 5 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds. It's really powerful. Ways that I've seen this to be even more powerful, we're all at our best during a meeting, but it's not really always the most comfortable thing to sit there and stage something. So kind of a tip that I've seen that people are utilizing is put your phone up, record yourself during the entire conversation, because you're usually saying a lot of gold during that conversation that afterwards you're like, wow, that was 45 minutes. It went really well. They want to move forward with us, but I don't even remember what I said exactly. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to see what these tools are able to do. We
It-
did have one
Yeah,
question that just
Sean,
came
I
in,
think Sean
and I'll let
talked
Andrew.
about LinkedIn banning Apollo. Yeah, I think the answer is yes, Sean. I think and this is, I think, a really important, really critical topic, I think, is, I think everyone's data is going to be extraordinarily valuable, right? More data you have, get more value. Translate. And I think, Sean, the why behind that banning, yeah, terms of service for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if they're going to come out with their own data API. Again, and this kind of speaks into directly I think a bit of my comment earlier around thinking about your business in a whole new way here. Like, what is your domain expertise? What is kind of the knowledge that you have or the data that you've developed as a business over however many years, and how can you leverage that in a new way with this technology to kind of even reimagine not just how you operate, but actually what you're providing to the world and how you provide it. So yeah, my answer would be yes, Sean. That would be my bet. Great
And
question.
I bet that I bet that they'll actually push a lot of that data into the paid services they're already selling, like LinkedIn
Yeah.
Gold and Premium. And
Yeah,
so
good
they'll
call.
probably try to force you to pay them to get access to
Yeah.
the results of that. That would be kind of a classic LinkedIn play. So I suspect you'll see some more premium services you can buy from LinkedIn in the near future.
Hey, well said, Jared. It will be monetized indeed. Well, we got one from Dale too, huh? I think new user.
I agree with that completely. I would never tell somebody they have to pay to get started, but the $20 a month tier of both those, I pay for both, are
Yeah.
way better, but the free tier is pretty good. So I would say if you haven't played around with anything yet, sign up for a free tier, but pretty soon you're going to want to pay $20 a month. It's easily worth that money.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Always
Dale.
how it starts. Free and
It's
then
always-
yes, I want to upgrade.
Yeah.
Once they get you hooked, then you're gonna keep going in. But yeah, I mean, mess around with ChatGPT, see the different things that are on there. I use Canva a lot. That's how I created this document that you're looking at right now. And I did find that ChatGPT is now creating information where you can back channel different links. So you can back channel Canva on there. You can ask it to create a bunch of different prompts. You can ask it to create images for you, and then it'll just magically spit some beautiful things out. I did create this myself, so it wasn't done through ChatGPT, but there are different tools and pictures that you can utilize. But again, like we said, what you put into these tools is what you're going to get out of it. The time that you invest within your organization to make sure that people are utilizing them safely and well as efficiently is really crucial. I think kind of burying your head in the sand and not worrying about it is only going to hurt your organization. And you have to make sure that you're having these conversations. Yes, it might be scary and you might not know exactly what you're doing, but that's why bringing in a partner and someone just to even have a general conversation. I know anyone here that I brought, Andrew, Lyssa, or Jared, would be more than happy to jump on a Teams call, grab a cup of coffee, or even go to lunch and just have a general conversation and just saying, how can we help your business, or how can we work together to partner? So it's exciting to see what's going on in this small to mid-sized business space, especially here in our home state of Colorado. I know we're growing rapidly, so really appreciate everyone's time today. Again, we will be sharing a recording of the webinar. We'll be sending out a document. I know that we threw out a million different AI tools, so we're going to kind of put together a little list for you guys that'll help everybody kind of understand what they should be using or shouldn't be using and how to utilize it. So really appreciate everyone's time today. This has been awesome. Definitely going to be doing a part 2 here in the fall, and hope everybody has a great spring break.
And thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.